Well, Stephen, thank you so much for joining us today. It's great to have you with us. We're shooting this just 2 days after a general election has been announced, so I'm sure it's a very busy time. Can you start just by telling us a little bit about yourself?
I'm Stephen Timms. I'm the Labour MP for East Ham in the East End of London, and I've been the MP for 30 years now, since 1994. And before that, I was a member of the local council for 10 years. I'm a church leader in Newham. My wife and I are part of the leadership team of one of the local churches, and I've lived in Newham ever since leaving university a very long time ago indeed.
Fantastic. And can you tell us a little bit about some of the challenges of East Ham? What are some of the things which you face there on a day-to-day basis with your constituents?
Well, the cost of living crisis and the pandemic before it was very tough for lots of people in East London. And quite rightly, people come and talk to me looking for help. And I've done my best to pass on those concerns to the government. And we have seen some progress, I think, in tackling those problems over the last few years. But, we need a change now. I think there's a very settled view, certainly amongst my constituents, but I think more widely as well, that it is time for a change. The country's got itself into quite a difficult situation. And there's growing optimism, I think, that Keir Starmer, if we are able to secure a Labour victory at the election, will do a really good job in charting a different and better way forward for Britain in the future.
Thank you. And I'm intrigued as to what first drew you into politics. So you say you've lived in that area for a long time, and then you became a councillor first of all, and then ran for Parliament. But what drew you into politics for the first time?
Well, what drew me to East London was a mission. I took part in a mission in Forest Gate one summer because it was decided by the leadership of our Christian Union that we should do that. So I went along. First time I'd ever been anywhere like the East End in my life. Well, we had a fantastic couple of weeks. I'd always been a Labour supporter since before I was a Christian. I remember as a very young child being really interested in politics and supporting the Labour Party in the way that other kids were supporting a football team. And having taken part in that mission, really enjoyed it. Then I got a job working for a computer company in London. I needed somewhere to live. The only place I knew was where I'd taken part in this mission. So I rented a room in the home of one of those who led the mission. I joined the church, which by then the team that led the mission had planted. And I'm still a member of that church today. And I also joined the Labour Party because I knew there would be a lively and active Labour Party in the area. And it seemed to me that this was an opportunity for me to get involved in the community. I hadn't done any politics at university at all.
Right.
But having moved to East Ham, I thought this was a chance to get involved, and so I did.
Fantastic. And then you decided to run for Parliament. I'm always intrigued. What is it that motivates someone to run to be an MP?
Well, having joined the Labour Party, I very quickly got involved and asked to take on various responsibilities, be the constituency party secretary and so on. Then I was asked to stand for the council, so I did, and was elected. Served 10 years on the council, the last 4 of those as leader of the council. And then the former MP, a man called Ron Layton, very sadly, had a heart attack and died. So in early 1994, there was a vacancy. I was coming to the end of my 4-year term as leader of the council. And I put my name forward as a potential candidate and was selected to be the candidate in the parliamentary by-election that followed. So it was never something that I'd planned, but it happened. And I was very pleased to be elected in that by-election.
Well, you've been an MP there now for 30 years. That's a long time to be an MP of of the same place. And what have been some of the changes you've seen across that 30-year period?
Well, there have been some very good things that have happened and some not so good things. So amongst the good things, I would point to some of the developments underway in East London, and part of which are a result of things that I did when I was a councillor all those years ago. There has been a dramatic improvement in the standards of schooling in our part of London, and I think largely down to the policies of the Labour government, which I was a minister in, and those improvements have been sustained over the last 15 years or so. Those have been very positive. Much more difficult have been the housing problems that we face. There's a real housing crisis, which my constituency is at the sharp end of, and every week I'm meeting people in very, very difficult housing situations. And obviously the cost of living problems of the last few years have been very difficult for people as well. So good and bad. I love living in Newham, and whatever happens, I won't be moving anywhere else because it's home. But it's clear that there is a lot that needs to be done to change things for the better, and I want to carry on playing my part if I can.
Yeah. Well, how have you found being an MP throughout that period of time as well? Because it always feels from the outside like it must be an impossible job in some ways, in that there's lots which is said, which is sometimes not very charitable, and sometimes the atmosphere in politics isn't very gracious. But what has been your experience of being an MP?
It's a tough job, and the hours are long, and there's lots of demands. But I've loved doing it, and want to carry on doing it. It's a great job, and the hours are long, but it's all really, really interesting, and it also feels very worthwhile. And I must say, my constituents are very appreciative of the help which I aim to give them. I think people sometimes think that constituents just take it for granted. Well, that's not my experience. I think people really are appreciative of the help that they get. And I very much enjoy my relationship with so many of the people in the area I represent.
Well, that's a really helpful corrective, I think. Sometimes from the outside, it doesn't always appear to be a job which people would enjoy doing, but it's so great to hear that it is something which you have enjoyed doing.
I definitely enjoyed it a lot, yeah.
Well, you are well known for being a Christian who is in Parliament. Can you tell us a little bit about what difference your faith has made to you during your time in Parliament?
Well, I think Christian faith is a very good starting point for politics. And that's certainly been my experience. I think people sometimes think if you're a Christian, you get involved in politics, then a few weeks in, there'll be some great dilemma where the whip says do one thing, your faith says do the opposite thing, and it all collapses in a heap. And that's never happened to me. What I think Christians can bring to politics is exactly the values that can make politics work, that can build up confidence in politics, given that confidence is at pretty low ebb at the moment. I think, the way people look at the political situation at the moment. But out of our faith comes the values of responsibility, solidarity, patience, persistence, compassion, truthfulness. Those are the things we need to rebuild confidence in politics and to make politics work. And I've thoroughly enjoyed doing the job for all this time and been very grateful for support I've had from other Christians, both Christians in Parliament and Christians in my own church and in my community as well.
Fantastic. What have been some of the biggest encouragements to you during your time in Parliament?
Well, when I first became a local councillor, a group of friends in church said that they'd like to meet me to pray for me regularly. And so we started meeting once a month. And then when I became leader of the council, they said they thought they ought to pray for me every week. So we started to meet every week. And ever since then, so that's well over 30 years now, we've met on a Sunday morning before church, 3-4 of us, not a big group. But that's given me the opportunity to talk each week about what I've been doing, the decisions that I'm thinking about, what's going on. And I've found that very, very encouraging, just be able to have that conversation. Not that they tell me the answers when I'm trying to work something out, but they just give me the opportunity to set the dilemmas out and reflect on them. And I've found that a huge encouragement and help throughout the time that I've been MP. Something that I've been encouraged by recently has been a growing recognition in my party of the importance of churches and faith groups in our society, and something that Keir Starmer launched at the Labour Party conference a couple of years ago was a network of Labour Party faith champions. So MPs in the party, Christians, but also Muslims, people of Jewish faith, Sikhs, Hindus. And that's been a very encouraging affirmation of the value of Christian and other religious faiths in our society from the party, from the perspective of the party. That hasn't always been there in the past. I've been very encouraged by the fact that it has been of late. And I suppose, another big encouragement for me has been the progress that I mentioned with education standards in our part of London. I was schools minister for a year and introduced a thing called Teach First. And that's, I think, been an important factor in the improvements that we've seen. Very, very gifted people coming out of universities, going into teaching for a couple of years, and quite a lot of them are then staying permanently in teaching. And Teach First has done a great job in recruiting really wonderful people to teach in schools in my constituency. And I think that's a big part of the reason why exam results are so much better now amongst young people coming out of our schools than was the case 30 years ago.
Fantastic, thank you. I hadn't realised that was something which you'd brought in. A number of my friends have done Teach First, so that's really encouraging to hear. Have there been any particularly challenging times during your time as an MP?
Oh, lots of challenging times. We've lost some elections. I got stabbed in 2010. So yeah, there've been some tough times in the midst of that as well.
Well, we were saying at the start that a general election has just been called. I'd love to know your thoughts on why Christians should care about this general election.
I think this is going to be a very important election because we've had Conservative-led governments for 14 years now. That's a long time. I think it's time for a change. I think we need a change as a country. And I think it's very important that Christians should have their say about the direction in which the country should go for the next period. It feels to me as though there is more at stake than usual in this election, and the question of whether we carry on as we have been doing or whether we take a change. And I very much hope we are going to take a change, but I really welcome Christians wanting to have a say, both in terms of actually voting, but also in engaging, talking to the candidates, listening to their views about the direction the country should go in. And I hope Christians will influence that direction by talking to the parliamentary candidates in this election campaign as well.
Well, we know that the Bible speaks into every area of life. As a Christian, what are some of the biggest issues which you care about at this election time?
Well, there's such a lot that's hard at the moment in the country. I think Keir Starmer is right to say the number one priority has got to be rekindling growth in the UK economy. The economy has not performed well in recent years, and as a result, the resources to pay for the things that we all want to see delivered in public services have not been there. So, number one, we've got to get the economy growing again and build a vision for Britain's role in the world and how we can do well in the modern world that we find ourselves in. We've got huge resources as a country, massive skills, great opportunities. We don't seem to have been realising those for a while, and we need to do in the future. So that's number one. I want as well to see the health service fixed. I think most people feel the health service just isn't doing the job that we all want it to do at the moment. It was doing at the end of the last Labour government. It definitely isn't now. That needs to be put right. We need to tackle the housing crisis. We need people to feel safe in their neighbourhoods. Too many people just feel it's not safe around where they live now. That's got to be put right. So I think there's a huge amount at stake. I think there's more that schools should be doing. And I've been encouraged with what Keir Starmer's been saying about that. But there is a lot to be done. And I think Keir Starmer and the team that he's built around him is setting out the right way forward. He's described it as a mission-led government that he wants to lead, 6 missions that he's spelt out. And I think most people looking at those missions, fixing the National Health Service, making the streets safe again, removing barriers to opportunity in education, getting homes built again and getting the economy growing. Those, I think, are missions that people will recognise as the right directions for Britain to go forward in the next few years.
Thank you for that. I guess lots of people who are watching us might be supporting the Conservatives, might be supporting the Liberal Democrats or other parties. Can you tell us why, as a Christian, you are a member of the Labour Party as opposed to any of the other parties?
Well, I'm a lifelong supporter of the Labour Party, and my enthusiasm for the Labour Party is as strong now as it's ever been. I think there are some fundamental things that are different about Labour, and the key thing probably is the way our party is funded. Our party gets its funding from the contributions that ordinary people pay in their subscriptions to their trade union. That's where the resources for Labour come from. All the other parties are basically dependent on rich people. We're not. We're dependent on the subscriptions of ordinary people. That's a key difference. And it's the reason that I think that Labour is able to deliver fairness in the interests of everybody in a way that the other parties just are constitutionally not able to do, because they have to reflect the priorities of the rich people who fund them.
Well, we know that Jesus, I think, would probably find things to affirm in every party and possibly even some things to critique in every party. Can you talk first to us about some of the core values which Labour holds to, which you think Jesus would really affirm?
Well, fairness is the key thing that Labour is about. And for me, it's the Jesus teaching about the kingdom, which one day is going to come, and which we can work towards now. We know it won't be fully accomplished at the moment, but it will do one day. One day will be fully accomplished. And the teaching of Jesus is very, very clear about the priority for the poor. And I want to see our country moving in a direction which is more responsive to the needs of the very large number of people today dependent on food banks. We never used to need food banks. Today we are completely dependent on food banks, and thank goodness for the churches who are delivering those food banks. But the Trussell Trust is campaigning for an end to the need for food banks. And I think they're right to call for that. And I think that Labour is the only chance we have of moving the country in that direction, much more positive direction than we've been in for the last 15 years.
Thank you. I guess on the other hand, is there anything which you have found as a Christian has challenged you about being a member of a Labour Party?
I've always been very supported by the party. When I joined a very long time ago, I remember feeling a bit nervous. What were these political activists going to think of a holy Joe like me rolling up and coming through the door? But the party has always been very, very supportive to me, and I've been very grateful for the opportunities that the Labour Party has given me as a elected representative for all of this time. I just hope that the party gets the opportunity to be in government again, so that we can bring about the changes that we recognise that the country needs.
Yeah. Fantastic. Okay, here's your big chance. Give me your best plug for why I should vote for Labour.
I think the missions that Keir Starmer has set out are the right missions for the country. Getting the economy growing again, fixing the National Health Service, making the streets safe, removing the barriers to opportunity in education, setting up Great British Energy for more affordable, renewable electricity for all of us, setting up a new border security force to tackle these problems of the small boats coming across the channel. I think those are good directions that people can be enthusiastic about. And Keir set out the task of a mission-led government, setting up the structures to deliver on these missions. We've got to get the economy growing so that we can fund those missions. So that's number one. He's absolutely right to identify that. And I think given that, we can be very optimistic about the prospects for Britain in the future.
Thank you very much. Well, as we come into land, can you just talk to us about what your prayer is at this election time?
Well, I think all of us who are candidates in the election will be grateful for prayers for wisdom. We're going to be under a lot of pressure over the next 6 weeks, and it does need wisdom to kind of get through those weeks in good shape, to be able to know how to answer the many questions we're going to be asked, the many demands that are made of us. It's going to be an exhilarating 6 weeks, an exciting 6 weeks. I've always found election campaigns very enjoyable, but they are demanding. Yeah. And I think it's wisdom above all that we need to navigate the pressures of the next 6 weeks without doing too much harm to ourselves.
Well, Stephen, thank you so much for joining us today. We are so thankful for all that you have done across 30 years. We're a huge fan of yours here at CARE, and best of luck in this election time.
Well, thank you very much for having me. And I should make the point that I'm very grateful for the support I've had from CARE over all of these 30 years. I've had a very large number of superb interns working for me, recruited through the CARE scheme. And I've always been very appreciative of the help and support I've had from CARE. So thank you for giving me the chance to speak to you today.
Thank you. It's been a joy.